Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another Buffalo SportsCenter video. I am Don, and today we are going to talk about the Buffalo Bills being linked to DeAndre Hopkins, star wide receiver of the Arizona Cardinals. And there has been a lot of buzz recently about whether or not Hopkins could be moved, and it's seeming more and more likely that he will, given that Arizona is probably going to go into a rebuild again. They tried to go all in with this push. They acquired DeAndre Hopkins for a minimal trade package a couple of years ago from the Houston Texans, and it just hasn't worked out for anyone down there in Arizona, down at State Farm Stadium. And now it looks like Hopkins could be on the move again. The veteran wide receiver, he did have a good year in Arizona last year. He caught 64 passes for 717 yards and 3 touchdowns in only 9 games. Yes, he got those numbers in only a half a season worth of play. So he's still DeAndre Hopkins. The injury or the suspension plus a little nagging injury that he had was a little concerning, but it's not often that you get a 6-game PED suspension. I wouldn't guess that he got that again for this upcoming season. Now, for Buffalo, this could be huge. Acquiring DeAndre Hopkins to pair him with Stephon Diggs is elite. That is beyond elite. That is absurdly elite for Buffalo. That would put them into definitely Super Bowl conversation again. They were in that position last year with Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis, but we all saw this past season that Gabe Davis isn't the most consistent receiver, and while he still was fairly productive last year, a lot of Bills fans were hoping for more. They were hoping that he maybe would hit 1,000 reception yards, but his play in the final part of the year just really was disappointing. He did not show up in the playoffs. Well, actually, he did show up in the wild card game against Miami. Against Cincinnati, though, no one showed up. And he's still got talent. Don't get me wrong, Gabe Davis does. But DeAndre Hopkins is a certified number 2. He's definitely still a number 1 wide receiver, even if he is 30 years old. But let's keep talking about DeAndre Hopkins here a little bit and talk about what the Bills would have to do to get him. Because Hopkins is on a pretty big contract, and I know there are a lot of reports saying that if DeAndre Hopkins were to be traded, he would probably be getting paid a lot less by that new team. It seems like the Cardinals would have to retain a lot of money on his big deal right now if they were to try to offload him. And for the Bills, they don't have a ton of cap space to work with, so they're going to have to trade a pretty sizable, big-time money-creating player like Ed Oliver. Ed Oliver, defensive run stopper for Buffalo, he's been pretty good for Buffalo since being drafted in 2019, but he hasn't been great. Not for a top 10 pick, he hasn't. When he's good, he's very good. He is very disruptive. He's one of the best run stoppers in the league, but when he's not all there, and he wasn't really there for over half of this past season, he really just turtles up into a shell, and he's not really there anymore. He doesn't really appear. His play is extremely inconsistent, and I get that he's still on the younger side, but the Bills were certainly, and plenty of fans were hoping for him to be a really big wrecking ball, and that's what he was billed as. That's what he was advertised as coming out of Houston in college. He hasn't turned into that here, and I would say that he's probably the most popular candidate to go back to Arizona in a theoretical DeAndre Hopkins deal. Now, talking about a potential return for DeAndre Hopkins can be a little tricky. Some reports say that he could fetch as high as a second-round pick plus a pretty decent roster player. In that case, the Bills would have to give up their second plus Ed Oliver to get Hopkins. But other reports now are saying that DeAndre Hopkins could fetch a similar return to that of the Brandon Cooks trade. If you don't know already, the Brandon Cooks trade was Brandon Cooks, wide receiver for Houston. He's been fairly good. He's on the older side, like DeAndre Hopkins. Doesn't have as much upside at this time, but he's still fairly good. And Cooks, he got traded to the Dallas Cowboys for a 5th and a 6th round pick in this upcoming draft. And Ian Rappaport is saying that maybe that does potentially be the return for DeAndre Hopkins. That could be what happens. Ian Rappaport said, and I quote, "Similar to Brandon Cooks, a trade would likely mean an altered contract." That's what multiple sources are saying, according to that insider. And I if that were the case, then I think the Bills should definitely be all over this. A lot of people on NFL.com and around the NFL circles are saying that Buffalo and DeAndre Hopkins is a match made in heaven. We'll have to see. Like I said, the cap situation is definitely the biggest hurdle for Brandon Beane to jump over. But if there's anyone that can do it, it's definitely Brandon Beane. Isn't that funny? Only a couple weeks after me questioning whether or not he's a great GM, he may do this. And of course, Brandon Beane did make a couple of other moves. He signed Damian Harris. He got Trent Sherfield from division rivals. And adding DeAndre Hopkins now to those two and to this offense would definitely catapult the Buffalo Bills back to Super Bowl contention. So, anyways, thank you so much, folks, for watching. What do you think? Is DeAndre Hopkins to Buffalo even realistic in the remotest, slightest of chances? Let me know in the comments section. Make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. Follow us on Instagram. Follow us on TikTok. You can find us both on those platforms at Buffalo Sports Center. Same spelling as it is here on the YouTube channel. And you can join the Discord. All of those links are in the description below. But thank you so much, folks, for watching. I was Don. This is Buffalo Sports Center, and I will see all of you in the next video. Peace.